Hi everyone. Welcome to the April plenary session, and we've got Professor Barry Heimer here to talk about psychology. It's going to be very exciting. So please say hi in the chat, and then I'll hand you over to Barry.
Great, thanks very much, Sarah, and hello to everyone. I'm obviously not able to see everyone at the moment, but Sarah's going to be looking after all the housekeeping and the chats, and this session is going to invite you to contribute quite a lot. So it's not going to be me and Sarah talking at you for an hour. What we're going to do is suggest a few little ideas. There are one or two positions we're going to ask you to set up as well. So if you haven't already got a chess set, and ideally it would be better to have an actually old-fashioned three-dimensional chess set to hand, that would be great. If you can't get hold of that, it would be possible for you to just set up one or two positions on your laptop. But it'd be best if you had a three-dimensional set to hand. We're going to use that a little bit later on in the session. So we're going to be talking over the next hour about psychology and chess. And I'm delighted to address this topic. It's one that I've been really excited about throughout my career, and not just in my chess playing years as well, but in my years in teaching and in universities. So I've decided to call it Don't Believe Your Granny Unless She's Rated Over 2000. And we're going to explore the dirty dozen of 12 chess psychological monsters, things that can get in the way of your improvement at the game of chess. So let's start with number one. Just before we do that, perhaps I'll just say one or two little things about our ground rules. As I mentioned, we will be asking you to discuss and challenge and contribute anything that you might want to say about your own experience. Do it kindly. Obviously, we don't want any put downs of anyone else's ideas or thoughts, but I'm sure that that's not likely to happen anyway. You will be muted most of the time, but Sarah will invite you to unmute and share your thoughts from time to time in each of these little psychological monsters. If you would prefer to stay private, please use that function with Sarah as well, in which case not everybody will get to see your thought and idea, but for some of you, you might prefer that from time to time. So here's monster number one, believing your granny. What we mean by that is, remember what your granny's job is. Her job in life is to love you, adore you, and worship you. Her job isn't really to give you very useful advice and ideas about how to improve at chess. So it's just possible that some of you have got the sort of wonderful grannies who say to you, oh, you are magnificent, you're wonderful, what a talented boy or girl you are, you're definitely going to be the next world champion. Love them, kiss them, adore them, but don't believe them, because the chances are that they are not in a position to give you any really good or useful advice in the field of chess. The risks that I've got over here for our first monster is that somebody who gives you praise too much is going to encourage what we call complacency, which basically means that you feel that wins are going to come easily, you don't have to work at them, a false sense of how good you are at the moment. I'm sure that most of you are pretty good for your age, but you're not as good as you could be and probably will be in a year or two's time. And it gives them too much of an emphasis on your results, not on how you're doing at chess and what you're learning. Everything comes down, if you believe praise, to whether you get a win or not. And there's much more important things which we'll be talking about over the course of the next hour than that. So my first question for sharing is, how do you treat somebody's praise for you? If someone comes up to you and says, oh, Ramesh, that was fantastic. You're obviously got a bit of a towel inside you. You're a natural talent. This is fantastic. This is wonderful. How do you treat that kind of comment? And I invite you just to share your thoughts and responses in the chat box. Sarah will be picking up one or two of those, and it'd be lovely to share them. So ready when you are, Sarah, if there's anything coming through.
Arian says, say thanks. William, thanks and then forget it. Thanks, but what if they did this? From Charlie.
That's an interesting one. It's nice to express thanks. You know, that appreciation, somebody's been nice to you and they've given you praise, so that's great. And then followed up, with, but what did you think about this move? If they're giving you chess feedback, that can be much more useful.
That's good.
Great.
From Austin. Say thanks, but don't take it on board and ignore it. I like that.
That's a great one. That in fact, somebody that you've worked with, or most of you have worked with in recent weeks, my friend and co-author Peter Wells, who did some work, I understand, recently with you on Fisher's Life and Games. In our interviews with the top English players of the last 20 years, most of them said that's how they treat praise. Thank you, but they forget it. It's not something that they're going to dwell upon. And by the way, that's how most of them treat criticism as well. We call those the two imposters, praise and criticism, like triumph and disaster. That's great. Anything else, Sarah, that's come up so far?
Lots of people saying just say thank you. So that's echoing what you've just said.
Yeah.
So thank you, and then forget, as Theo said as well. Say thanks and ignore it for the next games. Yeah, so some very sensible things coming through.
Really sensible. So basic appreciation. Thanks, Granny, or thanks whoever's given you that praise, but don't take it to heart, and don't believe that they will necessarily be the best judge of how you're going to improve at chess. So that's our first monster. There's a lot of research evidence in psychology about the dangers of praise. And people usually give praise because they think it's going to build your confidence, make you feel really good about the next game, but it can actually have some surprisingly negative effects. It can make you focus too much on results, or think too much that the reason you're playing chess is to win other people's praise. So put praise back in its box, treat it with appreciation, and not too much. So a lovely set of responses. Thank you, everyone, for those so far. So we'll move on to our second monster. And our second monster is simply to believe that your chess skills and your chess ability and your chess results have got a ceiling. And what we mean by a ceiling is at some point you will know how good you can be. When we know from all the research in psychology and other fields of learning, no one ever knows, not even the person herself or himself, how good they can be at anything. None of us will ever know what that ceiling is. And the risks of thinking that at some point you're going to reach your potential, which is quite a dangerous word in its own way, because we don't know what potential is. But the risks in believing that someday you will actually hit that ceiling is that when you think you've reached that point, you'll give up continuing to learn and therefore continuing to improve. That's the point you think, okay, I'm going to be a club standard player for the rest of my life, and that's my lot in life. That's what my genes will allow me to achieve. And there are real risks in that when you could actually go a lot higher.
Yeah, and this is true in chess, but in life as well.
Absolutely.
You get a lot of people saying, oh, I'm not very good at maths because I'm not in the top group. Probably not you guys. And they think, oh, I can't do that because I'm not good. But it's true. You shouldn't think you've got a ceiling. You can always do better.
And I think Sarah's probably lived that life when she was a girl. I imagine some people gave the impression, even if they didn't say it outright, that girls can't be any good at chess.
Yeah, definitely.
If she'd believed that she was going to reach a kind of a girl ceiling in chess, she wouldn't have become the kind of England player that she became, in her later years. I say later years, makes you sound like you're 80, Sarah. But
I'm old now. I'm in my 30s. Is
that right? Okay. So there's a real risk that we might set our sights too low or overvalue this concept of ability. And there's plenty of evidence out there that ability is something which can play a role in achieving in chess, like in anything else, but it is a long way from being the most important thing. Some of the more important things in ability are things like persistence, stickability, being resilient, and when you get knocked down, getting up again and taking another punch. Those things turn out to be better predictors of your ultimate levels of achievement, including things like chess, and your natural ability in the game. But I know that when I was a little bit older than you, and I was first learning the game as a young teenager, I was really impressed by the people I thought had all this brilliant natural talent. And the result is, I thought that these were the ones who are going to be the future grandmasters. And someone like me, well, there's no hope and there's no prospect. And therefore, you start setting your sights really low. You think that your ceiling is going to be much lower than it could otherwise be. So I'd just like to ask you, and kind of open up the chat again for Sarah to manage, asking questions like, how good at chess do you think that you personally could get? And how do you know that? And and what's stopping you from becoming as good as you would like to be in the future. We'll just take a few moments and wait for a few of your responses to come through.
That's a great question. Before you ask the question, Theo said, never give up on improving. And I think that's true. You can always get better.
Absolutely, Theo. Spot on.
Yeah, Joseph said before as well, also it's just hard work.
Hard work and the right kind of work.
Yeah, the right kind of work. I see a lot of people doing the wrong work and then getting upset because they're not improving.
Yeah, And again, you see that in school as well. You see some children who work really hard, but they're doing the wrong kind of work.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Therefore they just get frustrated.
Yeah, and they sometimes in chess people will do lazy work, and I do that sometimes myself. I know I should be setting up on the board, but it's easier to just do it on the computer. It's very easy that way. You're doing like the wrong type of work. So some responses there. So Joseph, when you think you have a limit, that's a real obstacle. Excellent.
Yeah, nice one, Joseph. Thank you.
Florian said, I think I can be as good as I want to be. Gonzalo set very difficult goals. So when you don't achieve them, you don't feel disappointed. That's
an interesting one. Gonzalo setting really, really difficult goals. So when you don't achieve them, you won't feel disappointed. It's a really interesting one. We need to be a little bit careful about setting goals that we don't expect to reach. Because if we set them so hard that we kind of say to ourselves, well, there's no way I'm actually going to get this, therefore I won't be disappointed, the chances are our goals are going to be just too far ahead of us to allow us to make good progress. So Gonzalo, I'd suggest probably bringing those goals a little bit closer to your current level of achievement. A little bit too hard for you at the moment, but not way too hard. Getting it in that sweet zone, that sweet spot of doing things that are just a bit too tough for you at the moment. But you can see that with the right kind of work or support, you will be able to reach them in the fairly near future. Those are the perfect goals to be setting. Yeah, I always say just one step outside of your comfort zone is a good challenge. There's loads of comments now, so I'll just go through them. Thank you. So yeah, Joseph added, like, you can always get better. Theo said, choose hard work for you to challenge, just like in school. William, I don't know how good, and probably stopping me is the people who are stronger, have more experience in the rating category. I think we might come on to this later, but I don't think people should get attracted by ratings, because people get so obsessed by ratings. I've got a funny story which I can share with you in a minute once we've gone through these. Kenneth, I will try to become titled like FM. That seems like a good goal. Excellent. You've definitely been improving a lot. Anna, nothing is stopping you from getting better. You only need to practice. That is true. Alyssa, although I think that's Ethan, believe in yourself. That's good. You should believe in yourself. Believing in yourself is really important. Really important.
Gonzalo said, although I set difficult goals, I always achieve them.
Oh, wow.
Thanks to hard work.
Nice one. Thank you, Gonzalo.
Theo said, never overestimate or underestimate anyone. Anyone can beat anyone. William.
Really good.
So it was quite funny when I went to this tournament. This child came out and said to me, oh, it's amazing, I just drew with a 150. I said, you're a bishop up and you were playing a 50 grade. But because they thought they were playing someone that was higher graded, they were happy to have a draw. But whereas they knew they were completely winning, and if they knew they were playing somebody that was essentially very bad compared to them, they would have just carried on and won the game. Because they saw that number on the score chart and read it wrong, they thought that was an amazing result to draw. But if you're beating a strong player, you should carry on anyway. Absolutely. So what they were doing is that they were playing the position, and not playing the position, they were playing the rating. Yeah. And they just got the rating wrong. And of course we should be careful about that. But as you say, we'll probably come on to that quite soon too. Yeah. Anything else there, Sarah? Or that's pretty much it? Your limit is your mind, and your mind is unlimited from Ria. That's very good. Wow, thank you. Never resign in chess and in life, from Gonzalo. Lovely. So that's the real take home from this particular monster, thinking that someone somewhere has got a plan for you, and in your head there is a rating number. When you reach that rating number, you won't get above it. And we need to knock that monster out of our head as soon as possible.
So let's move on to monster number 3. And this, I borrowed a Greek word over here. The Greek word is hubris. And what it means is, as it suggests on the screen, an exaggerated sense of pride in yourself or self-confidence in yourself. And this is the flip side, and we'll see in a few of our monsters that very often they go together as almost opposites. And this is the flip side of believing that you have got a ceiling, and this is believing that you are destined to be unbeatable at some point. You're going to extend Magnus Carlsen or Ding Leary's record runs of unbeaten games, and you're unbeatable. And when you go in with that kind of armor, that kind of excessive self-belief, there are real psychological risks. You're setting yourself up for a really big fall. If it's been so long since someone of your age beat you in an age group competition, that you can kind of come to the belief that I'm unbeatable, or because most of you are the strongest player in your schools, you can develop a sense that you're unbeatable. And it's only when you meet up against stronger competition that things really become quite tricky, and you realize perhaps you're very much beatable, because we all are. Even Magnus Carlsen, as he's discovered in the last few months, has realized he's very beatable when he's not in his top form. So the question we've got for sharing over here is, I wonder if anyone would be brave enough to share a moment, because we've all had these moments where you've come crashing down. You went into something, or a game, or a tournament, or a league, believing that you were going to win. Maybe you were the highest graded player, and you believed that was going to be your passport to success. And what happened is that you got brought crashing down. I know I've got loads of those experiences.
Yeah,
even Sarah might have some as well.
Definitely.
Do you want to start with one of yours, Sarah, just whilst people get a few thoughts down in their chat?
Okay, well, I remember at the London Chess Classic, I can't remember which year, but there was a women's invitational event, and I was playing really well, and I'd beaten like Susan Lalich and people, and I was on track for a norm, and all I needed to do was beat a seemingly easy player in the last round. And I remember thinking, oh no, it's a draw, I'm not going to win and get my norm. But I was completely lost, and I just lost, and I felt really stupid. I said, oh, so annoying, it was a drawn position, I just didn't realise. So things like that happen all the time, because I've been playing so well, I just assumed I could beat her because she was lower rated than me, etc. And no, I didn't. And
there's a really devastating, and then when you could have had a draw, you end up kind of going down into that worse and worse cycle, and maybe even end up with a defeat. And there's a devastating moments there.
Yeah, but you never forget your chess games. I mean,
no,
you really don't. I mean, I've got an even more embarrassing one, which I could share with you. I was playing with a very good friend of mine, Camwell, in the English ladies, and I was just 3 pawns up, I think, in an end game, and for some reason I fell for a mate. That
Ouch.
was very embarrassing, and I just said to Alex, don't even say anything. So chess is a hard game, and
it's tough, it's cruel, can be really cruel.
Players are very good. You shouldn't underestimate your opponents.
Yeah. Has anyone got a story of their own there, Sarah, to capture their own experience of these horrible moments where we come crashing down?
Okay, so let's have a look. Start with Charlie.
Nice to hear from you again, Charlie.
Actually, sorry, that was from earlier. So let's go. Jaden said, I lost to all my friends and I was so upset. Gonzalo, I was playing in the weekly school tournament. I lost to a weaker player and threw a chair. Oh, Gonzalo, I remember that. I remember
really?
that. I was there. I was like, uh-oh, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Gonzalo. That's very brave of you.
Yeah, I was there actually. Charlie, I did that with my county tournament. I was rated 2000 and all my opponents were sub 1700, but because I underestimated them, I came third.
Yeah.
It's always hard to win a tournament that you're like the highest rated in, I think.
Yeah.
Ria said, hubris can also lead to complete loss of self-confidence after losing.
Yes.
Yeah, we could talk about that in a minute, because a lot of players lose one game and then go for a streak of losing. Yeah. Whereas Magnus Carlsen is amazing at bouncing back when he loses.
Incredibly resilient.
Yeah, exactly. Aaron, I lost to a 1200 in Blitz because I played too quickly. Theo, I was top seed in the regional French championships. I thought I would win it, but I lost to a 1200. I was 15:04 FIDE at the time. Yeah.
But that still hurts, Theo, doesn't it? Those are really, really hurtful moments, those. But thank you for sharing that.
Kenneth, I was a full point up in the British in December with 2 games to go, but I lost both those games.
Ow.
Yeah.
The thing to remember, folk, these are really powerful, wonderful stories, is that even Magnus Carlsen has got those moments, to account for. And it doesn't mean, therefore, that you reach your potential. The fact that you're back and bounced back and are still here today means that you've climbed above that. So that's great that you've done that.
Yeah, well, I've got so many people that I met through chess because I started when I was 7, and so many of them, they just gave up when they started losing, that they couldn't cope with it, and that was it. They just moved on to everything else they wanted to do in life. But I think being resilient and learning from a young age that losing does hurt, but knowing how to recover is really good, not just for chess, for life as well, because it's challenging.
Yeah. My guess is that many of you can share Sarah's experience there, that you have seen people who maybe were more naturally talented at the game than you were, but you've overtaken them already. And the reason is maybe they lost the game to someone they expected to beat, and they thought, I've reached my potential, I've reached my ceiling. And their hubris actually led them to say, well, I'm going to get out now because this was such a horrible experience. I don't want to repeat it. And it means they lost to chess, and chess loses them. So well done to those of you who've had these really nasty, horrible experiences, but have seen that as it's a learning experience. I'm going to kind of file that. I won't forget it, but I will file that, and I will bounce back after it.
A few more. I remember playing in the ECF Academy Blitz, where I won against a few players which are much better than me. This is William, and then lost to some worse players and placed in the middle. And then Arian, I remember in the Giga finals, I lost to a guy who didn't even know it was checkmate when he did it. That's painful.
Wow, that must really hurt.
Yeah.
Great, thank you for those. Some really powerful stories there, and you probably won't forget them. Former world champion Anatoly Karpov said about those moments, he said, analyze them, study them, and then try and forget them. And what he means is what we talk about people like Magnus Carlsen, and Nigel Short was very good at that as well. When you have a nasty experience, try and put it behind you. And there's a great golf instructor who was at one time golf instructor to Tiger Woods, probably the greatest golfer ever. And he said the next shot has got nothing to do with the last shot. And what he means is put the last shot, which may have been a terrible bunker shot or something really, 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 really gross, put that behind you, because the next shot has got nothing to do with that. And that's what the best players are able to do. So remember that little one, hubris, again, you want to keep that in its box. It goes alongside believing that you've got an upper limit. Alongside that is you must be very careful about thinking that you kind of guarantee to get a game because you're a stronger player than the person you're about to compete against.
A nice comment there from Charlie. You're only as good as your last game.
Yes, absolutely, Charlie. That's right. And the next game is the one that you need to focus then on. So let's move on to impatience. Sorry, I've been a little bit impatient there. Moving on to the next one before Charlie had his story encountered. For those of you who'd like to explore this one in a bit more detail, I've written a much fuller science blog for the Chessable learning platform. It's free to access. If you want to just go on the blog pages there, and you'll find a little blog post called Impatient to Improve. That could be the problem. But I'd just like to give a kind of a very mini digested summary of that for present purposes for us here today. We all know what impatience looks like and feels like, and I'm quite sure that everyone here has had really good advice from your chess teachers and coaches in the past. I know I had loads of times my chess teacher say to me, when you see a good move, Barry, sit on your hands. And I think most of us have had that kind of advice. It is good advice, and if you see a good move, find a better one. Yeah. That was advice we got from Emanuel Lasker, one of the longest serving world champions in the early part of the 20th century. So we know that there are risks around being impatient, but everyone here will have had moments where you've been looking at a position in a game, and then you've suddenly seen this brilliant sacrificial path that's opened up for you. And it's going to make you look like Alexei Shirov if you just play the next 3 moves. You bang them out on the board. and you play them because you can see the glory. Yeah, you've got people crowding round. You're going to amaze them with your skills. And then you just realize, oh, hang on, I've missed the resource that my opponent's got. Or maybe a counter-attack, or maybe I've left myself open to a back rank mate, or some of these horrendous things that you only see after you've impatiently played your brilliancy. And the result is you might lose, or at the very least, you ask too much of your position. You think you should be winning, or maybe you're playing a weaker player and you try to force the pace a little bit, and you end up blowing that really, really strong position. So our question for this little monster is, are you personally affected by impatience? And can you remember a moment when you've acted a little bit impulsively, a little bit impatiently? And perhaps you'd like to share how you deal with impatience yourself. Have you found there's a particularly good strategy that you use that you can share with the rest of us? So let's take a few moments and invite you just to share a few of your thoughts on chat, and Sarah will pick those up as they come in.
Yeah, great. Theo said it happened when he was playing a 2200 player over the board.
Wow.
An exchange up and failed to win. I think I saw that game. Yeah. The thing is, it's like you get excited because I guess you're going to beat your best ever opponent, and then you think, I think it's easy because you're in a great position, and you fail to slow down. Bryony wrote something I thought was interesting, which resonated with me actually. Maybe you want to finish your game quickly and your opponent is taking forever. I've had like a dinner date on, and I'm like, I'm completely winning, so why are you not resigning, or why are you taking ages? And that has gone against me. I don't really do that now. That was when I was younger and immature.
Very common though, isn't it?
Yeah, especially when you know you're winning and you know that all your friends are waiting for you for dinner. Yeah. Okay. What else have we got here? No. You need a good balance, and a small amount of each of the monsters can be extremely helpful. A little bit of confidence, not asking far too much of yourself, letting yourself feel a bit better with praise. They're all medicine in all amounts. So that's very good, Ria, teaching us what we should be saying. Florian remembers how bad it will feel if he blunders. William, I played someone in a casual blitz game, saw a great gift and missed the bishop f5 defense. Oh yeah, bishop f5.
Ah, wow, yeah. Or sometimes pawn f5 as well.
Then you just a piece down. And then I was looking at one yesterday, anyone that was in my class yesterday, where it's queen f5 after a check on a5, and it can just be painful because you're just a piece down then. Jaden says just focus and don't let it affect you. Great. So I haven't got any.
Some really good advice, really good suggestions there. I do mention in the blog it's really important to keep a good balanced diet, and I'm kind of assuming you guys have a really good balanced diet, but the reason is there's a little chemical called serotonin, which seems to be very, very influential in helping us cope with being a little bit impatient and impulsive. And though there are no foods that give you serotonin because it's made inside your body, there are foods that provide the building blocks for that. And just to take an extreme example, pineapple is really rich in some of the building blocks of serotonin. So if nothing else, make sure that you gobble a pineapple before.
I'm going to see them all eating pineapple at the next.
Absolutely, bring them to the tournament hall. I'd also like to mention just the story that Sarah gave earlier. My good friend and really experienced chess coach Tim Kett tells his pupils that if you're in a winning position, he says you've got to learn how to savor it. And what he means by that is really get some long, slow joy out of the win. Rather than going for a quick crush, remind yourself that you're really enjoying playing this. You're in a really strong position. You don't want it to end too soon, and you certainly don't want to give your opponent any way back into this position. So learn to savor it, and then maybe you can take that into a game as well. That when you're in a winning position, don't bring it to an end. The fun's over then. So savor it and enjoy it for a little bit longer. But I'd like to take this chance for you to use your chessboards for the first time now. I'm going to ask you, if you would, just take a couple of moments to set up this position on your own board. I won't tell you who's to move or anything particularly about the people who are playing this game or where they played it just yet. Just take a few moments and set this up. You'll notice that black has got these two powerful rooks on the c-file, bearing down on white's king. Black's lost both his knights so far and one of his bishops. White seems to be hanging in there. There's this really powerful attack that black seems to have. So just take a few moments and set that up on the board.
This is a good test because I'm always saying set them up on the board, set them up on the board. And
Yep.
most people just set them up on Lichess because it's quicker and easier. So
Yeah.
come on, impress me.
Be patient. Be patient.
Yeah.
Curb your impatience. Be patient and set them up on the board, because you're going to want to play it through in a little while. And it'll be much more fun when you're actually physically moving the pieces around.
Should I be setting it up on my board as well, or are we okay on it?
Up to you, Sarah. If you wish to, that's great. But what I'm going to do now is just give you a bit of context to this. This was the second time these two players had met, facing the same opening on both occasions and in the same tournament, though in different years. The white player was an English grandmaster who's still very active in his 60s by the name of Mark Hebden, and he was playing one of the greatest English players of all time, particularly in the 1970s and early 80s, John Nunn. And they were playing at Hastings. On this occasion, it was 1998, very early 1998. And John Nunn, who was playing black, had apparently sacked his rook on c3. And what he was going for at this point was strong chances for a perpetual check. If you just have a little look at the position there, you'll notice that once the rook gets taken, black's going to have possibilities for queen takes a3. And because white's got a bishop and a queen on e3 and e2, it's going to be quite easy to get that queen onto that a5 to e1 diagonal and force white's king back, if it ever goes onto d2, back onto c1, when there should be a fairly easy, at least perpetual, and in some lines maybe even possibilities to get that other non-sacrifice rook into the game and finish it off. But a perpetual is really what John Nunn was going for in this position. So it's white to move, and I'd like you to explore a few possibilities over here. You will obviously want to explore taking the rook, and is there anything you can do about that? But your biggest clue in this position is that we're looking at the monster of impatience, and see if there's a white response over here, which might be just the thing that Mark Hebden needed to find. So take a few little moments, play it over. When you think you've got a really good move, let Sarah know in the chat, and maybe she'll give us a little commentary of some of the options that have been presented by
Yeah, maybe say it privately to the panelists, and then other people can
okay
find it. That'd be great. Theo said f takes g7, question mark, rook takes a3, perpetual comes, and then he said 1b takes c3, queen takes a3, king b1, rook c6 gives black a strong attack.
Yep. Yeah, also good calculation there.
Yeah. Yeah, take your time, guys. You've got your ball.
Take your time. Mark Hebden took about 10 minutes over this move, so you're well under that. So no need to rush. Be quite patient and see if you can find a move which is going to give white, in fact, all the fun.
I don't actually know. Did Mark?
No, he did find it. He did find it. But as I say, it took him 10 minutes or so.
Yeah.
But I suspect that he kind of seen this a move or two earlier and was just kind of checking all the options over here. Didn't want to blow it.
Well, that's the thing. I've seen lots of juniors wanting to move instantly to kind of show off to the audience and, oh, I saw it. But a lot of strong players, they know the move they're going to play, but they have to double check it. They have to make sure it works, because that's why you get the time on the clock.
Yeah, absolutely.
Games.
Absolutely.
Mark Hebden's the only grandmaster I've beaten in an over the board game.
Oh, nice one. Was that 4NCL, Sarah?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it's 4NCL Congress in Coventry. That was a
nice one. What colour were you?
White. I like white. It has all the fun.
If he was white, I'm sure he would have tried to do a barrier attack or something like that on you, wouldn't he? And take you down his well-worn familiar lines. He knows inside out.
Yeah, he's very because he doesn't learn loads of openings. He just He's really, really well.
Really good knowledge of favourite view. A bit like people like the top French player at the moment, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, who if you're going to play him, if you're lucky enough to be good enough to play him as black, he's going to give you either a Grunfeld if you're a d4 player, or he's going to give you a Sicilian Najdorf if you're an e4 player. And he has come unstuck quite recently, by sticking too rigidly. He's been outprepared by a few people, but he's got good results with those.
Yeah, his Najdorf didn't go so well.
No, he's been taken apart in 1 or 2 tournaments recently. Yeah. So most of you will have now explored capturing the rook, and you've realized that black's going to have at least a perpetual if you do that.
Got a few answers in the chat.
Okay, yeah, let's have a few now.
Charlie was saying MVL because we had a little joke about what are his what's his nickname. Okay, we've got Jaden takes rook, queen takes a3, king b1. Yeah, that's very, very dangerous position. We've got from William bishop d2, bishop takes f6, b takes c3, rook takes c3, queen d2, queen e1.
It's a nice little line. That it doesn't quite work for white because
bishop d2. I guess they just take on c2, right?
Going to be able to take on c2. That's right, straight away, and it becomes very awkward then.
And Theo, he's written king b1, rook takes c2. Hang on. Yeah, king b1, rook takes c2, rook d2, rook d2, bishop takes d2 is the way black loses a piece. And then he said incredibly difficult to find, especially the quiet one, king b1.
Thank you. Can I just ask Theo, did you find that over the board? Has he given us a response on that?
He said yes.
Nice one, Theo. Well, take 5, and you found the Mark Hebden move. It's such a patient little move. He's obviously gobbled a couple of pineapples before he played it, but you're right. All Mark Hebden did was shuffle his king 1 square to the left, king b1, and there's nothing better for black to do than to try something like rook takes c2. There's nothing really going to happen on 83 now because white's given himself the c1 square for his bishop to come back and hold everything together. So after king b1, rook takes c2, Theo spotted a lovely little move there, which is simply rook d2. And well, what does black do? He's going to come either exchange on d2, which is probably his only real option. And then when you recapture with the bishop attacking the queen, that pawn on f6 is going to gobble up the bishop on g7, and a piece is going to drop. And it's a lovely little position there. Sometimes the best moves are these really patient little moves, not the fiery ones, taking the bishop or taking the rook or trying something even wilder, but it's a very, very patient little move. So I'll just say remember the power of patience. Sometimes the greatest chess achievements have been by people with what we call in the German word Sitzfleisch. They sit there. So the advice that I'd give is don't just do something, sit there. Sit there and quietly improve your pieces. Make sure your position's optimal. You've got little resources over here, and sometimes it's the sly, cunning little moves like King Bishop 1, which lead to pieces dropping off from your opponent. But we're going to kind of scoot on now to our 5th monster. And this is probably the most psychologically tricky of all the monsters that I'm exploring with you today. And it's called self-sabotage. And what we mean by self-sabotage is sometimes those moments when almost deliberately, sometimes it's not deliberate and it's what we call subconscious, but sometimes almost deliberately, you shoot yourself in the foot. And we don't quite know why it happens, but a lot of people, including some very leading grandmasters, talk about those moments when they've self-sabotaged themselves. And the risk, of course, is that you settle for second best, you blow one position, you don't realize your full potential, you don't win the tournament that you're online to win. And there's a lovely moment in one of Danny Gormali's books where he talks very openly and honestly about how he himself is very, very much susceptible to self-sabotage. And I'd like to just share Danny Gormali's answer to that once you've had a chance, if you wish to raise a few thoughts with Sarah. It's the most difficult question we're going to ask this afternoon. How is it possible to be more afraid of success than failure? Why would that happen? What's the possible reason for that? And if you do have a possible insight, excuse me, just share that with Sarah.
Hard question, so take your time.
Really tough one. Just once you share those thoughts, I'll tell you a little story from my life which doesn't relate to chess. But when I was a high school student and I played a fair deal of hockey, I wasn't in the top stream of hockey players, but I practiced hard and I became better. And I got an opportunity to play at a provincial trial. I was brought up in South Africa, and our counties there were called provinces. So I was playing at a high level, and everyone there seemed to be much better than me. And I had at the back of my mind, I don't deserve to be here. You know, I'm going to be kind of outclassed for them. I'm going to make myself look stupid. But I've been practicing a lot recently, and I found myself in a game where I dribbled 6 people. I did stuff I didn't believe was possible. I found myself in front of a pretty open goal, and I just needed to kind of knock the ball in a few inches. And I found myself frozen and almost deliberately putting the ball out, missing the goal. It was much harder not to score than it was to score. And I never understood that for years. People were amazed at this brilliant young player who's doing all this, making people look stupid, and then at the very end makes himself look completely stupid by missing an open goal. And the only answer I've got to that is that I was scared of succeeding, because then I would probably feel that I needed to repeat it. And maybe I didn't believe that I was capable of repeating that. So it was easier to kind of pull myself back into where I thought I was, you know, the level at which I should be able to achieve, rather than push myself and actually shine out, if you like, be a tall poppy in that situation. But has anyone else come up with a possible answer for themselves, Sarah, from why could we possibly fear success more than failure?
So Aaron said somebody might mistakenly accuse you of cheating.
Oh, that's interesting.
Good answer in this.
Really is in the internet age. Yeah.
Yeah. Gonzalo said, realize how high the standards will be.
Yeah. Thank you. That can be psychologically off-putting, can't it? We've got to face it, but it can be off-putting.
Arian, in a world championship, the press.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I was listening to Magnus Carlsen's commentary on the candidates the other day, and somebody was saying, well, how do you cope when you've had a bad game? And you have to then go to the press conference. And he said he just, you know, I mean, he has famously stormed out and not attended. I remember when I was at the New York match, he just walked away. But he said he just answers the minimum and then just goes, because it must be so painful. You've had a horrible
really
game
hard.
to then have to face people. Why did you lose? Why did you play that bad move? Next, you could be afraid of losing a lot of games at the higher level, from William.
Thank you, William. Yeah. Thank you.
It's very hard to win a game, but easy to lose one.
Yes. All very thoughtful answers. And
Charlie, sorry, two more. Charlie, it's easier to fail than to win, because to win, you put yourself at risk of failure or even setting everyone's opinion of you too high.
Oh, Charlie, thank you. Really insightful.
Yeah, and then Kenneth, no one thinks you will win, and if you will be surprised, others will be unimpressed.
Again, a really psychologically insightful answer from many of you there. Thank you very much for that. And that actually gets very close to what Danny Gormali said. And he said, when you win, it kind of sets up future challenges, and you think maybe I'm not going to be good at them. And he said, I'm used to failure. You know, I'm really used to it. I'm quite comfortable with failure. So it's not risky failing. But he said, winning, well, then that sets out the question, how good could you be? And he said, that can be a really scary question to answer. So I don't think everyone who's here today is necessarily going to encounter this monster in your lives, but some of you will. And I'll ask you just to kind of recognize it when you see it creeping up, and remind yourself that this monster is called self-sabotage. And it hasn't got your interest at heart. It wants to take you down and to get back to that earlier monster of keeping your ceilings low. And we need to confront this monster from time to time.
I've got one more message that's just come through from Ria. That's the trick. Don't take the piece. This 2000 grade must be tricking me. There's no point in trying. They're obviously better. I don't belong with these strong players. I'll never be able to do it again. And they'll take me seriously anyway. The mind of the monster.
Wow. Thank you. Who was that? Ria, did you say?
Ria, yeah.
Awesome. Really awesome insights over there. So when you see these voices coming, Ria, in future, and anyone else who might be having those, name them, identify them as the self-sabotage monster, and put them back in the box.
Yeah, I mean, sorry to interrupt. Sorry? Anyone had a position against a really strong player where they know there's a winning move, but they don't do it because they're just worried that the stronger player has seen more and they've got an okay position anyway. So they think that their winning move's not going to work because they're playing a stronger player, must have seen more. I mean, I think I've certainly had that. I mean, I normally do play it because if I can't see a reason why not to, I would do it. But it is sometimes it's like, oh no, I've got this winning move or I've got quite a good position anyway. And it can be a real mind game that you can play at the board.
Really is. And that's one of the situations where we let our opponents into our heads and we find that really, really awkward. So this is the monster that Sarah and I were anticipating a little bit earlier, and it's one of the bigger ones. You know, this monster you will see everywhere. The previous one, you know, just from time to time, some of us will experience self-sabotage, but this monster of rating intimidation is where you're playing a much stronger player, you know, one of those 2200 players that Thea was facing earlier. And the risk is that we then think, oh, okay, I'm going to create a lager over here. I'm going to create a fortress for myself. I'm going to play the hippopotamus, and nothing's going to reach beyond my third rank, and they'll never be able to get me there. And we start playing really defensively, really passively. And I use the phrase "on the gallows," as if, you know, I'm going to be hung. You know, I know I'm going to be killed in this game over here. So the risk then is that we start overlooking our opponent's errors. But you know what? Any game you ever play, you will be able to see that you made errors even in the best game you've ever played. Magnus Carlsen says that. He said, I've never played a game where I couldn't have improved. And he said, every game I play is riddled with mistakes. And this is from someone graded 2800 plus. So of course our games are going to be full of errors, but that's the true of our stronger opponents as well. The question I've got for sharing over here is just to ask us to unpack psychologically what you actually think a rating disadvantage means. What does it mean? You're playing someone who's rated maybe 200 points above you. What does it mean to be playing someone who's rated 200 points above you? And I'll just invite you to share your thoughts with Sarah as they occur to you. What does it mean to be outrated and to be, if you like, disadvantaged by rating?
Yeah, Ria wrote something quite nice before your question. Your chess career is a flight of stairs without railings. Every step up is a bigger distance to fall. All steps are dangerous, yet everyone uses them. If you're afraid to climb the mountain for fear of might missing a step and slipping, you'll certainly never reach the view. It's very good.
Wow.
Very insightful, Ria.
I'm going to ask, you know, Sarah, if you don't mind, if Ria gives permission, if you could find a way of just sending that to me at some point after this session, I'd love to explore that metaphor in more detail. It's so well worked out. Thank you so much, Ria. Anyone else?
So Aaron, someone who's had better past results.
Yeah.
William, sometimes the better player underestimates the lower player, so it's easier to beat them.
Yeah.
I think Jaden, I think I will lose. I play my best and take it as a lesson. Anna, it's more stressful if you are higher because there's more pressure that you need to win. Shivam, it means you don't feel under pressure and it's a learning experience because you don't expect to win. William, it's happened to me when I was 16A ECF and used to regularly beat players around 60.
Thank you. All very insightful. And what many of you are picking out over here is the reality that all a rating disadvantage means is that you're playing someone whose results have been better than yours in the past. But it doesn't explain why their results have been better than yours in the past. It says nothing about that. The chances are that that person has concentrated better in their games, or has known a bit more about chess, or has been playing for a longer time, or any number of reasons. But it says nothing at all about your chances in that game. There's no guarantee that you're going to lose in that game. You might, and in fact, the chances are you might, but that's chances in 100. If you're playing someone who's about 200 points above you in 100 games, you'd expect them to win about 70 to 80 of them. But that leaves you about 20 where you could win, and perhaps quite a bundle there where you could draw as well. If you are concentrating harder, you're working harder at the game, probably playing fairly aggressively, but not recklessly, because we do know that if you want to beat a high-rated opponent, the worst thing to do is to sit back and hope that you can survive, because possibly their technique and their strength will begin to tell maybe on move 50 or 60. You've probably got better chances of a measured attack and mixing it up a little bit, because it'll be tough for them too, coping with those combinations and the calculation required for that as well. So if you're really going to trap your Heffalump, go out there and mix it with them and see what happens. And if nothing else, you'll have a really fun and exciting game that you can learn from as well. Now, folks, I've been really, really grateful for some really thoughtful and insightful answers. I'm aware that we've only got about 7 or 8 minutes left to the end of the session. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to display the rest of the monsters, put them out there for you. And I'll invite you, perhaps even as a little kind of gentle homework, if you can go away and reflect on the questions for sharing and maybe find a chance to share on your general ECF Academy chat with others some of your thoughts and responses to these. Because we have got another 6, or at least another 5, and I'll lead you to make your own monster for the 6th. And I'll just very quickly like to share these with you. Number 7 is called the monster of concentration ambush. And this is where your opponent has probably strayed into the area of what we call gamesmanship. And they've done something to get into your head. And some players in history have been notorious for doing this. One of the greatest American players of the 20th century, a grandmaster called Sammy Reshevsky, who was a prodigy like many of you, was notorious for that kind of. He got into people's heads. Sometimes he did it by blowing cigarette smoke in their faces. Now, no one's going to do that to you. If they do, report them to the police, let alone the tournament director nowadays. But they will find other ways. Sometimes it's tapping against your foot. Sometimes it will be deliberately putting a piece on 2 squares and you're not sure which square is meant to be on. But they'll find some way of just kind of getting into your head in a little way. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to disturb your concentration. They're trying to make you react in a way. And I imagine with Sarah's tournament experience, she's probably had moments when she's come up against opponents.
I won't be long, but this.
No, please.
Vienna, I was playing a game against him and it was a really good game, and he just like leaned over and took the pieces that I'd captured from him. I just thought, that's so frustrating. It was just like, it really annoyed me. And sometimes I do get affected by it, so then after I've made my move, I took them back.
Took them back. Okay. Yeah, you didn't want to get into a tit for tat on that too much, because then he would have won. But you wanted to assert yourself quite properly. It's quite likely he was trying to get into your head, and just distract you a little bit and mess with your mind.
Brought his friends around the board and all that as well, and you just think it's all part of his plan.
And Sarah will have had experience of dealing with some men who hate losing to women. Particularly hate that, and they will do whatever they can to avoid that experience, and must be very sweet when you manage.
Yeah, and a lot of adults hate losing to children as well.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Absolutely. So I'll invite you guys just to kind of be aware of that, and the best response to it is to smile quietly to yourself and remind yourself that you're in control over here. You can't do anything about their behavior unless it's something you can report to a tournament director, but you can be in control of your behavior. And your behavior should be patient, calm, and quite enjoy the fact that you are not responding, you're not reacting, because that's what they're trying to get you to do. And if you feel that you're keeping the power and the control, it can give you a real edge psychologically in that position. And at the very least, means that you don't lose the psychological game that your opponent's trying to bring you into for that. But have a little think and a reflection on that, because number 8 and number 9 are going to go together. And very briefly, I'll share these with you. Number 8 is doubt. And those are those moments where you find yourself not believing your calculations. You've checked it and you think, okay, I'll check it. Maybe I'll check it a third time and it all looks okay, but there's a little voice at the back of your head that's saying, nah, I must have missed something. Maybe I'm playing a stronger opponent. They wouldn't have let me play that. Surely they've seen a little trap. And it's good to check and to double check and maybe even triple check, you know, but don't go overboard on this one. Maybe your opponent really has allowed an opportunity over here which they hadn't seen for themselves. So that's where your self-belief does kick in. And do remember to distinguish between good doubt, which is really about you know, just checking and making sure, that's fine. And bad doubt is not seeing a refutation, but believing there must be one anyway, even though you haven't been able to find it. Trust yourself that even if you have overlooked it, you've learned something from that experience, and maybe you can go away and work on that little motif. So next time, it'll be part of that learning experience. And I did say that number 8 goes with number 9. Number 9 is certainty, and certainty is almost the flip side of doubt. That's being too sure, being too confident that you've got a forced win over here. It connects with one or two of our earlier monsters too. And the risk, of course, over here is that we settle too soon on a move. We stop our search because we think we found the perfect continuation, or maybe even a flawed calculation. And I'll invite you again to have a little reflection on number 9. When do you or have you actually been too sure, and that's held you back, and you've actually lost out on a potential win? Now, what I'd like to do over here is, we're not going to have quite enough time for you to set this up and play out a few possibilities, but I'll leave this as part of your little homework exercise. And little word of warning, not even my stockfish found this earlier. It's something I found in a line. I was looking at a line in a variation against the Pietz opening. It's called the 150 attack, and it's because people graded roughly your rating, play it with a good deal of success, even against very much stronger players. And it's a lovely little line. There are quite a few candidate moves for white. It is white to move over here. And the English-Swiss Grandmaster Joe Gallagher spotted it, and Richard Palliser talks about it in one of his books. It's a very neat little move. And I'm putting this in the certainty monster box because it's very easy to stop searching and to miss this lovely little move. You might look at natural candidate moves, like just exchanging on G7, because you don't want your queen to be kind of overpressed and over in demand in situations. You might want to consider E5, and is that okay? Was that a little bit too soon to be doing that? Do you want to look out for trying to avoid that bishop taking your knight on F3, or do you want to go for something a little bit more interesting? And I'll leave that with you, and have a little play with that. And maybe, if you really want to find the answer, well, drop me an email, barry@chessable.com, or stick it on an engine and give your engine a little bit of time, because sometimes if you're only giving them up to 20 seconds, they don't even spot it even then. There's a very nice little line for white in this position. Don't be too certain too soon. Our last 3, and I'll just mention them briefly. One is called perfectionism, and that's believing you have to play the perfect game. Real risks there. Go through them in your own time. Number 11 is what we call avoiding, whether it's opponents that you don't like to play. Maybe it's a position you think, I don't play closed defensive positions. Maybe it's an opening that you hate having to face. Not the Berlin Wall, can't stand that. Deal with it and learn to front up to those, because if we don't, we figure out that I'm not going to learn how to deal with this in the future. We need to play a broad range of positions, a broad range of opponents, and a broad range of openings. And the very final one is a little invitation to you to build your own, because you might be sitting there with your very own psychological monster that confronts you, and it's not been mentioned in my 11 so far. If there is, again, I'd love to hear from you. And please let me know. My email address is simply Barry, my first name, @chessable.com, and I'd be very delighted to hear from you. Thank you very much, guys. It's been a great pleasure. Thank you for some really stimulating answers. Thank you for the opportunity, Sarah, and enjoy your next session with Sarah.
Thank you, Barry. That's been amazing. I've put your email address in the chat.
Wonderful.
Everyone will be sent the slides, so don't worry if you didn't have time to set that position up. And yeah, please do email Barry. He'll be very happy to hear your suggestions. And I was thinking about that position as well. I might email you my first thought on it.
Very keen to hear. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much. And
cheers then.
everyone else, if you just come back at 15:15 for a new webinar with Brandon and myself. Oh, Charlie has a question for you, Barry, before you go.
Sure, Charlie.
Favorite Chessable course?
What? Sorry, I didn't get the first part of that.
Favorite Chessable.
My favourite one is one called Checkmating Patterns, Mating Patterns, which is just brilliant, and it's got some great mates, not just from the great masters, but from people that you and I would recognise as well. I think it's an absolutely awesome course.
Great, thank you. All right, thanks everyone. See you back at 15:15. Bye. Thanks, Barry.
Thanks very much, Sarah. Have a good afternoon.